Hi, I'm Amy, and I'm going to talk to you guys about the problems that are rising when it comes to adoption. There's like a lot of kids that need to be adopted, and there's not enough people to adopt, and thus I'm introducing the idea of same-sex adoption, and I'm saying that same-sex adoption has a neutral effect on kids. They don't make the kid any weirder or any cooler or anything different than the other kids that are adopted by heterosexual couples. So yeah, by same-sex I mean the same gender, homosexual couples. And by adoption I mean by voluntarily taking the kid and legally taking guardianship. And by neutral effect I mean they will not have like a negative effect, or they will not have a positive effect. It will just be the same as any other. So first thing I want to talk about is, so homosexual parents actually teach the children the same values and the same ideals as any other parents will. Just because they're a little different, they will be a little bit more open as to what they teach the kids, and they'll be a lot more diverse. But in general, it's still the same thing. So the myth that homosexual parents tend to raise up homosexual kids is not true. It's proven that, well, there's no scientific proof that really correlates sexual or the orientation of a parent to their children. So having a homosexual parent doesn't make you a homosexual child. So pretty much there's no direct proof to that. And straight couples, for example, they have raised children that turn out homosexual. Doesn't mean that the heterosexual parent is homo. It just means that there's a change, and the parent doesn't really make the difference as to whether the children will turn out straight or gay. Another thing is that children with gay or straight parents tend to behave the same. They have the same GPA as any other students. For example, a study shows that about 90 teens were tested to have lesbian mothers, and half living with female of the same-sex couples and the others with heterosexual couples. Both groups fared similar in school. So pretty much the kids had a 2.9 GPA and a 2.6 GPA, not a big difference. There's no significance in the development patterns. They're taught the same morals, same concepts, or self-concept, and intelligence. They're pretty much no different than how they are raised. Continuing on, gay couples are growing to be more socially acceptable these days. Genders are less stressed in regards to relationships and roles. For example, because a long time ago there was like the whole idea that women are supposed to stay at home and take care of the kids, and the men are supposed to go to work. That's no longer the case. So there are mothers that take the role of the father, and the father that takes the role of the mother. There's no actual distinction as much as it was in the past. They have like growing support in both teens and they have support. They have growing support, and there's a growing percentage of acceptance for homosexuality from the 1980s to the 2600 or 2006. My bad. There's an increase of 30% of support for gay rights. The children would not get bullied because there's a growing increase in that, so the child wouldn't be bullied for that reason alone. Kids get bullied for many reasons, being too fat, too skinny, whatever. They get bullied, so regardless if they're having homosexual parents or not, is not a key factor as to them being more bullied than others. Same-sex parents have the capacity to fulfill both maternal and paternal roles. Like I have said, the roles and the gender distinctions are not really clear anymore, the way that the trends are going. So gay couples tend to be recognized as having stable relationships. They don't necessarily have to be a couple relationship like male and female only. Male-male and female-female relationships are just as stable. The ability of a single parent to adapt for mother and father roles kids have single parents all the time. I have a single parent. My mother is a single mother, and she took on the role of my father. I didn't need a father, so having two mothers is just the same. And then even if they don't allow same-sex adoption, there's other ways like surrogate mothers where one of the males are actually it's actually going to be his kid, so he has the right and power over the kid. So yeah, in general, what I'm trying to say is that same-sex adoption doesn't affect the child negatively. It just is neutral regardless of the heterosexual or homosexual parent. Yeah. The end. So when you put your inside, you have to stop.
I think so.
All right, Amy, I think you would have benefited from having an attention device to set things up. You start off with a claim about the number of kids who need to be adopted and are not being adopted, but that's an assertion. There's no information on that. You do identify the proposition pretty clearly. The phrasing is okay, although you then spend a minute defining a whole bunch of terms that I'm not sure that they ever become issues in the argument. So you don't want to define a term unless it's going to be something that's unclear to the audience and especially important in figuring out what the claim is. Otherwise, it just takes up a lot of time. There's no preview of what the supporting structure is going to be, so as a listener, I have no idea how these points are going to be organized. And when you get to the body of the speech, claims just randomly come up. There's no signposting on those claims. The closest I get to a signpost transition is, and another thing is, and I don't really think that that's a very clear indicator for an oral presentation that you've changed your topic. You need something that stands out a little bit more than that. You give a lot of explanations about the assumptions, and I kind of understand the assumptions. I think you do okay on explaining those assumptions. I think you do need to provide some proof on a couple of those points, but the idea behind your argument, I think you explain that reasonably well. On the other hand, the evidence I think is problematic. The best evidence that you have are hypothetical examples about straight parents who end up raising gay kids and your own personal experience of being the child of a single mom and you turned out okay. And I'm not sure that that's really enough to be able to draw a generalization from. There are references sometimes to studies, but you never cite the study, you never tell us where it was published, you never tell us who is responsible for it, what their qualifications are, and so it's a little bit dubious. The closest you get to any specific data on the study is this GPA comparison. So we got 90 kids, some of whom were gay, some of whom were raised by gay parents, some of whom weren't raised by gay parents, and we got a GPA difference of 0.30 or something like that, and I don't know if that is statistically significant or not, and since you're not giving us a direct quote from the study, it's hard for us to make that inference either. So I think you need to be citing your evidence a substantially greater amount than you're doing now. It appears that you did some research, but you didn't put any of it into the speech for us to be able to assess. I think that there are some broad generalizations that are being made here and you're going to need better support for. You do a nice job talking to the audience. I think that's okay. I did have a little bit of a problem with the conclusion because you had a nice summary. You came back to the claim that you're trying to make, which is what I asked you to do, but then you put in that tag, Porky Pig exit, the end, and I didn't really think that was necessary. There was one point I could not figure out what you were talking about toward the end where, well, they could have a gay man or a lesbian woman and they'd have writer power over the kid, and I don't know what point you were trying to make there, so that just seemed like it was completely confusing. All right, thank you.